for early stage restoration linked startups. Validation is not just about proving that your technology works, but also that it works in real conditions and at a scale that matters to investors, partners, and customers. And to do that well, you need both the frameworks and the field experience to back it up. And that's exactly what our speaker today brings to the table. We're really pleased to introduce Mr. Vikas Mishra, who's the India Business Director at the Evergreen Innovation Platform. At EIP, he works on scaling climate smart technologies and building pathways for commercialization and adoption, engaging with a wide range of key ecosystem players like startups, FPOs, agri enterprises, and development institutions. Vikas brings hands on experience in pilot design, tech validation, and market linkage development, with a particular focus on the unique challenges of building for rural and underserved markets. So, in today's session, he'll walk us through how to design pilots that actually test what matters, build feedback loops that give you actionable data, and convert these results into compelling proof points so that you can unlock sales, investment, and partnerships. And before we get started with today's session, I'll now hand it over to Divya from the WRI India team to speak a few words about our Land Accelerator program.
Thanks, Ananya. And once again, welcome to Vikas and welcome all the cohort members. Thank you so much for joining in again today. I won't take too much time. I think the legacy of the program, vision of the program is quite clear to everyone. But just, sort of a recap. Um, Land Accelerator, as most of you know, is a curated network and an accelerator program. And we support businesses that restore degraded forests and farmland in India, right? So initially, we were also supporting businesses across South Asia. Now we support businesses in India, specifically focusing on three central Indian states, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh. Right, so this is the first of its kind accelerator targeted specifically towards restoration focused businesses, and we have a mix of activities like boot camps and workshops and virtual lectures and mentorship, demo day, pitching sessions, so on and so forth. The objective being that LA, as we call Land Accelerator, embarks these businesses on a short but intense journey of learning, growth, and transformation. So, very important to note, this is a journey of learning, growth, and transformation, on which we are all sort of going together, because we also learn from the startups, and each business brings learning to us as well, and which helps us sort of design the program better, the future run of the program better. We take feedback very, very seriously, and as all of you know, we have been reaching out to you for feedback after every session, right? So that counts in every step of the way. We started about 6 years ago, and between 2020 and 2023, we had 4 runs of the program. We have done this. This wouldn't have been possible without partners, of course. And in the current run, Will Grow is a very important and a very valuable partner. And WRI India and Will Grow have been doing all of these sessions together. And of course, we have support from Startup India and Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. They also have been our supporters, our partners, enablers right from day one, right? And throughout this journey, over the last 6 years, we have supported a community of more than 150 pioneers who are tackling the most pressing challenges, typically in 5 focus areas, which are sustainable agriculture, non-timber forest produce value chain development, organic land management, smart agri-tech systems, and circular economy solutions, right? So that's a little bit of what the program has been about. And I just want to bring a bit of attention. I think this also is probably already shared with Vikas, because we have completed, we are right now in the core capacity building stage of the program, where we have completed 5 sessions before this one. And 2 of those sessions were on identifying opportunities in restoration linked value chains, first and second part, because value chains are an important focus of the work that we do and how the Land Accelerator is organized, right? And we try to look at what are the different restoration linked value chains that our businesses are a part of, and how we can support not just the businesses, but also support in building some of these value chains, right? How do we focus? And going forth, we would be also enhancing our focus, limiting our focus to some of these value chains more than others, right? So that's an sort of ongoing piece of thinking. Apart from these 2 sessions on restoration linked value chains, we've also done unlocking capital in practice for restoration focused startups, fundraising specifically for restoration focused startups. And just the session before this was on customer profiling, right? And the next 2 sessions are One is on impact, and impact again is a very important cornerstone of the program, right? And this has also been reaching our cohort members. This message has been getting to them through different means, right? Also from how we've recruited organizations to the cohort, right? Giving a lot of importance to the socio-economic and environmental impact that the organizations track. And then over course of time, we will also support in understanding how do you track your impact better, how do you tell stories of impact better, right? That's also something which we feel is important going forward. And then, of course, partnerships for go-to-market success. That's also a session which is planned for later. With that, I think that's all I wanted to say. But this is important to understand that these are virtual sessions, and these are all designed based on the needs assessment that we have done in the last few months, along with the Wilgrow team, in close sort of discussions with enterprises. And therefore, we hope that these are tailored to your needs and you're able to participate and get the most value out of these. And of course, please keep sharing feedback as you always do, and we keep listening in and trying to tailor sessions as best as possible to respond to the feedback that we receive from the cohort. With this, Vikas, I can hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you for the introduction and for setting the context of what the accelerator program is about. And the theme that you all have selected out of the entire agricultural paradigm is of utmost importance. Restoration, or a subpart of it, what we call regeneration, is very timely, is very much needed, right? The quality, the organic content, the overall condition of inputs of the sector has gone down by anything. We need to improve that. We need to bring the sector to a level where it is meaningful and it is bare minimum sustainable for the entire process to work out. And how do we do that? The land size is limited, conditions are limited, weather conditions are worsening. We do it through innovation. And where does that innovation come from? It comes from the founders and the innovators and the startup colleagues that are sitting in the audience today. So I think it's a very, very opportune program, and I'm glad to be a part of it and share whatever little insights I can with everyone. With that, I'll just share my screen, take you through sort of these a couple of slides my team has put together, share a bit of what little we know. There's a small exercise towards the end that if ideally it was designed for in-person workshops, but I think you all can do it on your own. And then later, one by one, we can take those examples. That is there. I will also briefly share my company's pitch deck, a few slides from that. That, however, is not the core of the program today. The core is taking you all through the topic, what Divya, Prajita, Payal, and the team had shared earlier, the brief and the certain points that they had shared with me. So with that, I'll start. Payal has already introduced me. Sorry, Aprajita has, I think one of you have already introduced me. Some of you already know me. Some of you are part of our program in different stages. Some of you I know through the ecosystem, but that's the beauty of it, the confluence that programs like this together. With that, I'll just share my screen and get started. Let me know once, because I wouldn't be able to see myself or you all. So let me know once the slides are visible.
Visible. You're visible, and Payal will be extending moderating support for you wherever there are questions in the chat.
Right.
She'll be supporting you there.
Perfect. So I would request that let me just go through these slides, and then towards the end we can have like a dedicated question answer, dedicated, more free flowing sort of a conversation going. So hi everyone, I am Vikas. I work at the Evergreen Innovation Platform, driving India operations and strategy. I have been working in the wider agri innovation space for close to 10 years now, earlier in the renewable energy space. Then since 2018, properly core in the agri-tech space, through several industry associations, through research institutions within the governmental landscape, And now with EIP, where we look at innovative solutions and validate them technically, validate them in the market, and then take them to scale. So that's a little bit about what we do. The topic that I'll be discussing today is what's the importance, why market validation is a necessity, is a important imperial step for startups that are linked to restoration. Okay, so what exactly are we going to do today? I will try and differentiate what do you mean by product validation, or more say technical validation, versus pre-commercial or market testing or validation, right? I will give real world examples, real field, farmer field and farmer market examples. I will take you all through how do you design a validation pilot, how do you decide the parameters, how do you decide what has to be considered, what has to be looked at, what has to be measured and recorded, right? How do you take this experience? How do you take all this data? How do you take all these learnings and churn out something useful from it, right? How do you make them into, of course, case studies, but also return on investment use cases? And what happens before you were trying to enter the market without any structured validation versus what happens when you enter the market with something foolproof, right? Where all these can be used in terms of exploring long-term partnerships, in terms of raising investment, etc. A little bit I'll touch upon what typical investor looks at. What I think one of the questions was what an international investor would look at. I'll touch upon that as well. Right? It will be very practical. We're all, we're all colleagues here. We're all practitioners of the agri-tech innovation landscape. So it'll be free flowing. It'll be knowledge sharing as well. So you all can ask questions, you all can share your experiences, and we can have a discussion too, right? So most of you where you are today, I think certainly all of you, none of you are in the ideation stage, none of you are purely in the prototype stage. From what I could gather based on the information shared by the WRI India team. You all are beyond that. You have field deployments. Some of you are selling commercially. Some of you have products that have wide scale market acceptance and are now innovating for a different domain, for a different subset of for allied sector of agriculture, for something else other than your core business, right? Of course, most of you, or in fact, all of you would have heavy reliance on operational data, nitty-gritties of how a daily operation flow looks like, how your process is flowing, how your supply chain is flowing, right? What procurement records do you have? What sort of customer feedbacks do you have, right? And this basically is a chance for you to sort of get a flavor of how you can use all these operational data and these records and all the feedback you've received in a more structured manner into something that we call a piloting or a validation, and something more structured, something more measurable. Okay. Now, first and foremost, when we talk about validation, right, the first thing that pops to the mind is taking your product, taking what you have developed, your innovation into a laboratory, having it tested, if not a laboratory, into a research institution, into an institution that does sort of, controlled, purely controlled testing, purely closed testing, right? That is your pure product validation. That is your pure technical validation, but that does not equate to your market validation because it's in a closed sort of a setup. It doesn't give you the actual idea of how things move or how things take place in an actual market, right? So product validation, whenever any organization, any institution designs a product validation, the first question, the foremost question that they ask is the solution, is the innovation functioning or working as it is supposed to, as the innovator, as you, as the tech owner have intended it to work? Is it functioning as it's supposed to function, right? And how well, what's the range if it's off by a certain points? All of that is measured in product validation. Market validation is sort of a study where you see that in a repeatable manner, in a scalable manner, is there a market for your product? Is your target customer ready to pay for that product, right? And if they are paying, how is that solution getting to them? Are you directly selling it to them? Are you selling it to them through any intermediaries, right? What is there for the intermediaries to gain in it? Like Adivya mentioned, the value chain approach, right? If it's just if it's just one spoke in the entire cycle that is benefiting, or everyone is benefiting in some stage or other. That is what a typical market validation looks like. Now, let me be very, very clear that both have their own innate value. These are not replaceable. Product validation has immense value, right? Without properly validating a product, you cannot enter the market. But these are not two same things. At times, certain organizations, certain institutions design plans that are overlapping, right? As part of product validation, they also test cost benefit analysis. They also test customer acceptability. But these are not replaceable. These are two very distinct things that might be done together, that might be done separately. But they are both very necessary. They're extremely important in order for you to develop a robust product as well as a robust market entry plan. I think the session one after this will focus on market entry, right? How do you get to that is what is getting covered in your market validation, right? Y'all y'all in fact are for a fact very good with your product validation, right? But you might, you can use some help in um, improving your market validation approach, or improving what crops, regions, and what different target customer segments you all study. So I've used the word mission critical because that is exactly what it is. In whatever your aim is and whatever your goal is, right? In developing your innovation, market validation is a step you cannot miss, right? Your models, your solutions, your innovations, more or less the ultimate beneficiary in our sector is a smallholder farmer, or a farmer. In general, a farmer in India is a smallholder farmer, 80% of them. So a farmer, be it small, medium, or large landholding, is most likely the ultimate beneficiary, whether you're doing soil testing, or whether you have a rice transplanter, whether you have a carbon credit system based on artisanal charcoal, right? Artisanal biochar. Ultimate beneficiary is somewhere or the other the farm, right? How exactly do you design a model, right? How exactly do you design a model considering the landholding that they have, considering the climate and market risk that they're facing, is part of your market validation, right? And if you have designed a model based on assumptions, based on hypothesis, based on best examples, if something worked for X startup, it should work for my venture as well, right? If based on that you are validated and you're entering the market, you're thinking, oh, B2C is something very easy to do, and let me just directly go and talk to the first adopters in a village and try and sell my product. That approach might work, that approach might not work. But have you tested it, right? Instead of full scale developing your business around that, have you taken a subset? Have you taken a small portion and done some bit of testing on that? Right? That testing, if you've done, that is what your market validation entails, right? Your market validation de-risks. Please note the term de-risks. Nothing is risk-free. In any business, more so in agriculture, there is an innate risk to everything, right? But for any startup or a scale-up, a robust market validation plan, robust pre-commercial testing, de-risks your scaling up for yourself, for your investors, for your customers. They might be farmers or FPOs or village level entrepreneurs, and for all the partners in this value chain that we are talking about. So this is a bit about what my organization thinks. We, of course, have a pipeline approach. We source, then we technically validate, and then once technical validation is done, we look at market testing, market piloting. Once market piloting also is done with certain assumptions and with certain iterations, we look at full-scale commercial deployment. We work with grassroots organizations, certain foundations, and we very heavily work with agri entrepreneurs or village level entrepreneurs. We work with FPOs as well, right? For us, validation is not just a standalone, sort of like an independent exercise. It's part of a continuous evolution, continuous adoption or adaptation process, right? You have an innovation. How that innovation has to be adapted to a certain food system or a certain geography is what we look, right? There are, of course, certain phases. There are, of course, certain checkpoints as well. Like if your technology doesn't perform well in the very first technology validation phases, then we do not take it in that particular manner, in that particular avatar or form. We do not take it to the next stage. We tell you iterations, we tell you improvements. You go and do that. You revisit the canvas. When you come back to us, we again do a technical validation, and then if that proves worthy, then we take it to the next market piloting stage, right? We test tech performance, but we also very heavily look at how your innovation gets to the ultimate customer. What are the channels it has to go through? What layers of intermediaries are involved? Now, we don't believe in having extremely lethargic or having way too many people in the supply chain, but that said, some bit of interventions are needed, some bit of intermediation is needed, right? As a startup, as a founder alone or with a few teammates, if you think of serving even a state market, the states that you mentioned, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, right? Even serving these three markets, it might not be feasible. So what level of intermediation is needed? Let me just share a bit on EIP, if you can see our deck. Um, this is a company's deck. As I said, the presentation is more about the goals of the program, the accelerator program, not purely about EIP, but I'll just briefly take you through who we are and what we do. Right? Of course, what we quite literally do, what quite a few of you already know, is we bring climate smart technologies to smallholder farmers. Right? These are certain numbers most of you all are familiar with. What small landholding means in the global south, what the stresses are, right? Everything, every climatic stress that we as citizens are facing, it is all the more worsened for a smallholder farmer, right? A good monsoon, a good season versus a bad season can make or break. I don't want to use certain words, but can be, can mean everything for a smallholder farmer. So that is why this is the opportunity. That is why, as I said earlier, how do you grow more out of the same piece of land? How do you grow more out of a land whose organic carbon content has fallen to 0.5 versus it should be 4.5 to 5, right? It is that low. Yes, it really is that low. How do you get it to work? These are families, these are folks who have to sustain their livelihood. Innovation is quite literally the only key. Now, when I talk about innovation, it could be technology, it could be business model, it could be using something that is existing in a slightly different, slightly adapted model. We of course work with soil preparation technologies, soil testing, remote sensing, robots for spraying, rotavating, weeding, etc. We work with technologies for precision agriculture, for better water optimization, for better input resource optimization, post-harvest solutions for extending shelf life of certain crops, certain produce. And we're also actively working on with certain partner organization on market linkages, on traceability bit, on creating a proper roadmap for a particular product, right? This could be for export orientation purposes. Very recently, we've also started a carbon project where we're working with a partner for biochar and MRV and um, all that bit, right? So these are certain issues that we are trying to address. We are actively addressing. You as startups have your solution. Smallholder farmers as market have need for innovation. How do you bridge that gap? That gap is being bridged by EIP, right? This is our entire sourcing process. We conduct a need assessment. Based on that need assessment, formulate certain challenge statements, go out looking for innovations, Indian as well as international. Once we have found an innovation, we do a very rigorous matchmaking. We extend the contract with them. We onboard them, right? And once onboarding, we design a validation process to look at certain elements, to look at the technology that you're claiming. How exactly does it work in real world farms, real farmer fields, right? Post that, as I said, Once that is successful, once we see some level of confidence, there we take it to a market piloting phase. And once market pilot is fine, we see, okay, with certain iterations, with certain modulation of business models, we can take this product to the market. Then we look at wider scale adoption. Right. We work, this is the overall ecosystem we work with. These are some of the partners we work with. Some of these you'll see have familiar names. We, of course, at an ecosystem level are partnered with the AGF, Agri Entrepreneur Growth Foundation. Of course, we have a partnership with Wilgrow, Social Alpha, and a few other leading organizations in the space. Right. I'll go back to my main deck, which is the focus of our talk today. I've covered this. Right. Now, let's look at now we've looked at the difference between a product or technical validation versus a market piloting or a market validation, right? So I personally refrain from using the word validation with market or a commercial sense of definition of the word, because once you are testing for your product, that should be enough to validate that whether your product works or not, right? Once you're taking it beyond that, it's more like test, it's more like piloting, it's more like trying out different models in different geographies. But yeah, for the sake of this conversation, we can use it nevertheless, right? You have to brainstorm, and either you do it yourself or with a technical team or with certain institutional teams, but you have to very clearly list out the assumptions that are to be tested, right, across these phases. You have to look at, first and foremost, who is paying for your product, right? There is an NABC framework that we've studied in B school called need approach benefits per cost and competition. So entirety of validation exercise is based on that. But you have to look at, okay, where is your lifeblood coming from, right? As agriculture entrepreneurs, as people innovating for the agriculture sector, there is of course a slight sentimental value attached to what we're doing. We all want to improve the life of smallholder farmers. We all want to improve the sector, reduce wastage, or increase what is being grown, reduce water usage, or optimize fertilizer usage. But it is crucial to keep in mind that we are doing this as a business. We are not doing it as a non-profit. We are not doing it as a philanthropic organization. Whether it's you, whether it's me, we are all businesses that are trying to make our livelihoods, while of course impacting the sector, while of course making lives better for smallholder farmers, right? So you have to first and foremost identify who's paying for it, whether an aggregator is paying for it, whether a distributor would pay for it, whether an NBFC will pay for certain insights you are finding out, whether the farmer himself or herself will pay for some sort of an innovation that you've developed that is readily used at a farm level, at a farm gate level, right? What exactly is needed, right? I think Arogyam is in the house, and we've done quite a bit of work with them. We're doing quite a bit of work with few of you as well. And we've looked at how do you inculcate soil testing as a practice, as a behavior in our target customers, right? What exactly is needed that you need to study, that you need to quantify, right? What exactly is the value you are expecting from farmer, from your user, right? This is where the benefit per cost equation comes in. If your target customer is paying 100 rupees for your service or your technology or your product, what is it that they're making out of it? For every 100 rupees spent, are they saving or earning back 150, 110, 120? If it's positive, if it's above 100, you have a market there. If they're spending 100 and gaining only 70, 80, 90 back, trust me, the usage wouldn't be there. The first and foremost criteria of a farmer is to meet the costs, right? That too, at times, certain situations, unfortunately, they struggle to get even the bare minimum price for their commodity, right? So that is an assumption you need to test. You need to put these in several buckets. Even within a market piloting, even within a market validation, you have to look at real world product performance, right? Yes, you have developed it in-house, you have tested it in an ICR or a CSIR laboratory, but is your product working as it should at the farmer level? right? That sort of product performance you have to check. Are they willing to pay for it beyond a certain pilot stage? Is the usability repeatable, right? Okay, they've done it once. Did they find value in it and are they ready to do it the next time around? These are certain assumptions that you have to categorize and that you have to very carefully measure, right? You have to consider your assumptions. What is it that's on your mind? What is it that you think should be happening? And sort of, I have a matrix I'll share with you earlier when we do a small exercise. You have to map it by certainty and risk level, right? If it's highly certain, highly uncertain, if it's high risk or whether it's low risk. So create that to sort of build out a model, right? High risk, high uncertainty is something that is more difficult to work out. Low risk, high uncertainty, maybe. Low uncertainty, low risk is something that could, quite easily work out. That means high certainty and very low risk. That is the best sort of the place to find yourself in, right? We are all entrepreneurs. We are startup founders. We are startup directors or managers or employees, right? We are not all due respect to researchers. They are the foundation stone of our ecosystem. We are not scientists. We are not researchers that are trying to create a 5 year long sort of a pipeline process, right? So our pilot, our this market validation exercise has to be very crisp. It has to be very straightforward, right? You have to have a proper objective, right? You like, let's say, for example, willingness in the target customer base to pay for a certain tech solution, right? It could be a rice transplanting tech solution, it could be a soil testing solution, it could be a mushroom shelf life extension solution, any sort of a tech solution that a founder base is a farmer base is ready to pay, right? Like the smallholder cotton farmers in Maharashtra can pay for soil testing or not. That is something we are testing, right? So you accordingly select your pilot targets. You accordingly select which district you want to do it in, with geography, with season, which time of the month, in Kharif, Zaid or Rabi, at the beginning, at the onset, after the harvesting, before the harvesting, totally dependent on your product type, totally dependent on your innovation type. You brainstorm, sorry, there's some background noise. Someone seems to be on a beach. Good for them. So you list down what exactly you have to study, when you have to study, where you have to study, right? So what district size, what district, what block, what village, what taluka, and how many farmers do you want to study? Whether it's a direct sort of a B2C model, or whether you need to work with an FPO that has at least 500 members, or whether you need to work with an agri entrepreneur that is connected with at least 100 to 200 farmers, right? Selling them seeds, selling them inputs, or something else. Um, is it something that can be studied, that can be established within one season? Or if it's a bio input that has to be studied across multiple seasons, right? In Rabi, you study it for tomato and onion, but in Kharif, you study that same thing for potatoes and some other crops, right? So basically, what's your cycle like? What's your product performance like? Based on that, you design your pilot, right? So as I said, I think I've already covered this while I was yapping, while I was talking. So is it solving an immediate, a very well identified need of the farmer, right? I'll digress a bit, but identification of need is probably the most important step in your journey as an entrepreneur, as an agri tech or agri allied entrepreneur, right? How crucial of a problem are you solving for your target customer? That would ascertain how successful your product can be, right? If you're solving something that's extremely crucial, that's been a pain point for many, many years, then yes, your product could have very high uptake very quickly, right? Also, at what price are you offering it? Is it just a simple, straightforward transaction, or if there is a service model, right? If it's something that they buy one time, use, and then buy again, or if it's like a digital advisory or some sort of a service for which they pay every month or for which they pay at the end of the season. How do they pay? Do they pay you directly, or is their payment dependent upon the sale of their crop, right? All of that. Now, Are there early adopters? Are there, leaders of the farming community that are coming forward and adopting your product, right? Where is a repetitive market coming from, right? If there is any repetitive market, someone has gotten soil testing done in one season, are they coming back for next? Someone has taken your product to extend shelf life of the grapes and strawberries. Are they coming back again and finding it worthwhile? Finding all the paraphernalia worthwhile, considering the value it has increased for them, right? You have to study all those behaviors, all those patterns, all those trends. Based on that, you have to look at, yes, if these champions of the farming community are convinced, their word of mouth, how fast it will travel, where can they put in, sort of a recommendation for you? Because literally in our Indian farming community, word of mouth is the most strongest testimonial there is, right? Advertisements and all that works to capture your attention. But repeated usability comes from testimonials from people within your own community, right? Now, look at it. Now, it all depends on what sort of technology are we talking about here, right? If it's sort of like an input technology, if it's something that is used in the early phase of the agricultural process, like soil testing, like, biological inputs, like precision agriculture, their validation design would be developed a bit differently. If it's sort of like an advisory that gives you live status of nitrogen in your plants, or climate alert, or irrigation alert and recommendations, etc., their engagement would be slightly different. Their perceived value would be slightly different. Or if you're operating at the other end of the value chain, where you are then procuring produce, where you are processing produce, you know, then what sort of consistency in quality, consistency in the volume flow, right? That has to be looked at. That has to be studied. Or if you are sort of like an advisory company or a practice implementation company, right? Then you have to look at your advice that you're giving, your recommendations that you're giving, how well, how adequately are they getting translated? Okay, farmer is taking your advisory, they're taking that sheet of paper, or they're getting those messages on their mobiles or WhatsApp, but are they actually going to the field and implementing those? That you have to very carefully study, right? So, um, as your program is more focused about certain crops, and it's based in central India and Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, right? So you have to look at a more regional approach. What sort of commodities grow there? What sort of value chains exist there, right? And you have to map that value chain, right? And you have to look at, in this pilot, you want to study the benefits in what stage of that value chain. Okay, like in our validation, we look at, firstly we look at what benefits the farmer is reaping, but also, since we work with agri entrepreneurs, we look at how remunerative, how beneficial is this particular uh, technology or this particular offering for our agri entrepreneur as well, right? So you have to map certain nodes in your value chain. Ideally, it should be the last mile user, the field implementer, and the tech owner, which is you, right? If all three are getting some sort of a benefit, or if two are benefiting, one is slightly, it's slightly loss making for them, or it's slightly zero by zero for them, they're neither gaining nor, then what is their motivation to continue, right? And what stage do they work in? What level do they work in, right? I'm sorry, I hope it's okay. I'm not reading verbatim what is on the slides. I think the team can look at it. I'm just sharing what's on my mind. I'll just talk, and you all can stop me at any time and ask questions, and or towards the end of the
Yeah,
process.
I just
I hope that's okay.
wanted to come in. Actually, some of them has requested like if we can keep taking questions in between. So can we take?
If that's okay, I'll just very quickly get done with this. Then it's better to take questions, if that's okay. So that the flow doesn't break. Because once we start taking questions, at times the conversation pivots into a completely different direction. So what exactly I'm trying to cover, that might get stalled in the middle. That's okay. There aren't way too many slides, very few slides left. I'll just take us through that, and then we can take a few questions. That's okay. Was that Payal or Aprajita?
Fine.
Okay, Payal. I hope
Mm.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So ideally, a successful validation would have evidence that all the nodes in your value chain have gotten some form of benefit or the other, right? Your farmers would have benefited from better yields or reduced loss of crop or better market linkages or better sort of, reduced labor drudgery, better automation, better utilization of the fertilizers and water, right? Your implementers or village level entrepreneurs or FPOs would have looked at it from a better processing, but better aggregating capacity, better satisfaction of the members within their federation, right? You as technology owners, you as entrepreneurs would have received, the amount that you've invested into your technology and then some, you've made a profit on it. Profit making can depend, it can be minimal in the early stages and then slowly go up. So it can vary, but ideally a perfect validation exercise would have some form of benefit, tangible, non-tangible, for all the stakeholders in the value chain, right? Now, you have done your pilot, you have all the data, right? You have measured what you had to measure, right? So how do you turn this into feedback? What do you do with this, right? You, of course, you have already decided in advance, as I've spent considerable time explaining. You've already initially decided what has to be measured, with whom it has to be measured, how it has to be measured. Now, how do you go back and say, hey, you've used this bio input, you've done soil testing through us, you've sold your staple waste to us to convert it into biochar. What was it in what did you gain from it? What was your experience, right? So you have to design a very robust feedback survey. That feedback can be in person, that feedback can be over phone calls, that feedback can be checking the transaction logs, checking the supply chain logs or of FPOs or agri entrepreneurs, right? And then having sort of like a group discussion or individual discussions with each of your partners, each of your nodes in the value chain, right? You ask very to the point, very succinct questions. You don't ask any random, just don't widespread your survey too much. Ask what you really want to know. Keep it short, keep it very to the point, and get the data, get the information that you're trying to generate, right? So let's say you want to look at how many active users were there for your application or for your device or for your technology, right? If for one season there were 100 subscribers, how many of them would come back and pay for it and subscribe again, right? Um, are there is would qualitative content matter? Would just rating them from 1 to 10 matter, or do you want them to have a free flowing sort of a conversation with you, right? How do you measure outcomes, and in what form do you measure outcomes? If it's a product that is directly influenced the growth of the plant, then has the yield increased, has the bulb size of onion increased, has the quality of mushrooms increased, right? These are the questions you ask. What was the cost involved? What is the money that your implementer has made based on that cost, right? What was the labor requirement? What did they shell out other than paying for your product? What were overhead expenses? Was there any risk involved in the process, right? So you capture all of this. As I said, you capture all your tangible and intangible data, all your insights, and then based on that, you look at it. Okay, this is what happened, this is what we were trying to do, and these are the results, right? We had an intervention for this particular stakeholder, this is how it turned out. You use visuals, you use sort of like graphs, charts, and case studies, and have literal farmer experience sharing, a little testimonial sharing, right? One most important part that you have to look at is unit economics or farmer based economics, right? How exactly have you elevated the earnings, or how have you influenced cost savings for your target farm, right? That this particular box is the most important or most critical aspect of your agri entrepreneurial journey, right? If you have proven value for the farmer, then all the stakeholders can find value and can find some way or the other to get the product to the market, right? If somehow everyone else except the farmer has gotten value out of it, then there is something going wrong, right? There is something that is not happening correctly, because ultimate beneficiary has to be the farmer, right? And if the farmer is making money or saving certain cost, then everyone in the value chain can, get a piece of that pie and make that model sustainable. Now, don't judge me when I say everyone can earn, because of course everyone is in it to make money, right? There's no cutting your partner's profits, but everyone has to make a livelihood, everyone has to pay their bills, right? And a model that is remunerative for all the stakeholders in the value chain is a model that works very well. If that is why I personally am slightly hesitant towards. I'll cover that. In fact, I would say that I'll cover that somewhere. Oh yeah, I'll cover that later. I'm slightly hesitant considering a philanthropic pilot as a pure proof of market acceptability of a particular product. Right now, this is one example. This is one of our cohort companies. Some of you might know who they are, but just for anonymization, I'm not using any names here altogether. Their specialty is in any biological input, there are bacterial colonies that then secrete secondary metabolites. These secondary metabolites are taken up by the plant. Right? Sorry, my biotech background is showing a bit here. But these metabolites are then taken up by the plant as nutrient, and how good, how high quality these metabolites are depends, then decides how quality the input is. So this particular company, why they are so special, why we have them in our program is their CFU number, colony forming units. Most other biological inputs have 10 raised to power 6 to 10 raised to power 7. They have 10 raised to power 9 up to 10 raised to power 10 for certain products. By that much of a margin, they have high colony forming units, right? High colony forming units means high number of bacteria growth in the soil. High number of growth means higher the number of metabolites that are converted and made available for the plants, right? We we saw excellent technical performance, right? And we saw really good farmer uptake in the technical validation stage. When we went on to a pre-commercial stage, we saw that the sale is happening, right? People, of course, the goal is not to completely replace chemical fertilizers, but sort of create a ratio, 80% chemical, 20% biological, right? The challenge that we faced here is, if any of you know how chemical fertilizers work, you apply them today, within 3 to 4 days, you will see shoot growth would have accelerated, or your plants, your leaves would be much, much greener, right? Biologicals do not work like that, right? How do I convert it into a more layman sort of a term is, it's your allopathy versus, let's say, Ayurveda, right? Allopathy works instantly. It'll bring your fever down immediately. But Ayurveda would work in a longer term setting. It would create an atmosphere holistic where, your immunity is improved. So similarly, a biological input would make all the nutrients available to you. But for the colonies to grow, for it to properly function, it takes a bit of time, right? So the farmer base that we work with, we then divided them into early adopters and champion farmers versus the late adopters, or those who need more proof to start using a product. We saw that early adopters understood how a certain product works, and they were appreciative of the fact that, okay, even though immediately we didn't see any growth, in longer time this is more healthier for our plants, more healthier for our soil, and it's much more restorative in nature, and it's much more healthier for our consumers in nature, right? Because it's biological, so immediately as soon as you harvest, the bacteria died off. There's no residue, there's nothing left, right? So then we formed a group of these certain early adopters, and there were certain FPOs who were part of this early adopter group, and we decided to commercialize the product within this network. And once we saw that uptake is happening with them, Then the late adopters, then the secondary adopters follow suit, and based on their word of mouth, based on the real results, the real fields that the farmers within the community visited in each other's settings, they saw that okay, this product season by season it's working, and it's in longer term it's benefiting the plant and it's benefiting the soil. Then they also decided to adopt it to a certain extent. So if we would have decided, okay, this product did not work for everyone, we would have had a very negative sort of feedback. And had we only looked at, no, we need to sell it to everyone or we won't sell it to anyone, then it wouldn't have found market. So that is what we learned out of this validation, that you have to segment your customers. You have to, and also it's not like these early adopters are going to walk up to me and say, hey, I adopt technologies early. Nice to meet you. You have to be on the lookout for them. You have to continuously stay in touch with them, continuously keep having conversations with them. Something that my team and I and our co-partner team and I do quite a lot. And then identify and keep these people in loop, right? That yes, they have higher potential of adopting innovations. So they can serve as our champion implementers or champion farmers on the field. One example. Second example, and it's something very close to my heart. I've gotten rid of what number of remuneration we impacted, but I can say that, but I can't put it because you all want this to be in your records, right? So we scouted and we found a company that has patented a certain mushroom spawn technology, right? This technology grows on straw. This technology doesn't need specialized compost or specialized uh, medium to grow on. It can grow on your paddy straw. It can grow on your other sort of agricultural waste. And the beauty of this spawn technology is it has higher yield rate. It has lower rate of infection, right? That all we established in our technical validation. That all we had already baseline we have created before we went into commercialization. Now, what we did is we looked at farmers, we looked at women farmers in Madhya Pradesh, in Jabalpur and Dindori, right? That were aiding the entire family in the farming process, but had some capacity, had some free time, or were ready to make out free time to do an additional livelihood creation activity apart from their daily duties, apart from their family duties, and from their field labor contribution. So we identified 50 of these farmers. We facilitated spawn purchase. Now, please note, all of these farmers paid for the spawn, right? Because they work with a subsidy with an intermediary like us. The costing is still in a very affordable manner, but they paid for it. They paid for the straw. They paid for the entire process, and they started growing oyster mushrooms, right? One cycle, two cycle, three cycles, and then we saw that okay, they are growing these and they're consuming it within their households. Not our immediate goal, but good if nutrition is benefiting, that's good. They have found hostels and hotels in their vicinity, certain restaurants in their vicinity, and they have come together to aggregate their produce and take it to these hostels. There were certain cantonment areas, there were certain educational institute hostels where they started selling these mushrooms, and each of the farmers, each of these women farmers were getting 4 to 5 thousand rupees extra in their hands, right? um, what I'll do is I will diverge. I will show. See this. If you can see this slide, Pyle, is it visible? This slide. Ethno Mushrooms is the name of the company, and these are actual
Yeah, it's
women
visible.
farmers. These are actual women farmers, and this is just a sample of the mushroom being weighed, right? So that is the kind of intervention that we enable for these women farmers. And trust me when I say this 4,000 rupee meant I can't describe the value of this 4,000 rupees for the woman farmer in that area, right? It was tremendous. The kind of resilience that it enabled for them as women and for their families was tremendous, right? So they are continuing this. Then the wide scale adoption happened slowly. We are continuously trying to replicate it. Uh, one of your cohort mates technologies also, we are trying to overlap with this and, see if this can further be accelerated, further be improved, right? Um, so as I'm coming to the closure of my presentation here, you look at, if you're talking about farmer sales, if you're talking about a farmer-centric validation, you look at simple case studies, simple numbers, right? How much fertilizer usage optimized, how much water intake reduced, how much yield increase happened, how much produce was prevented from rotting or going to waste. Simplistic numbers, right? For intermediary organizations like farm producer organizations, for village level entrepreneurs, it gets slightly a few more layers come on top of it, right? You see how the adoption was de-risked. If they invested a lakh rupees in buying a soil testing technology for 500 rupees per test, how long did it take for them to remake that money, for them to earn back that amount, right? So study those metrics for your off-takers, for buyers, for producers, for processors, right? Consistency is the key. The volumes that they were expecting was that consistent. The quality that they were expecting was that consistent, right? And how sort of their value chain was impacted, how it was improved. Okay, so they depending upon who is the center figure of your validation exercise, your attributes to be studied, your parameters to be studied can vary, can differ case by case basis, right? So I think I've adapted this to reflect the question that was asked of me in the mail. Now you all can read what is on the screen. I'm not going to read out exactly what is on the screen. You can read it. You can have access. There's nothing proprietary as such in this presentation. That's why I've kept the EIP presentation separate. I cannot share that. This one you all can have. You can keep with you. What an investor looks at. Some of you have raised investment. Y'all, I think all of you have raised some form of grant funding from some incubator, some government program or the other. I'm talking about more institutional investors. I'm talking about more, either equity or certain um, sort of a loan product investment or, so certain other sort of investments. Um, what an investor loves is repeatability. Investors don't love something crazy, some crazy numbers, some crazy bar graphs. They they prefer reliability, they prefer repeatability, they prefer dependability, right? Your customers, if they are increasing your bootstrap, that is completely fine. You have no external investment, that is completely fine. But by your own efforts, your customers are not going down. If you had 100 in the first go, second can be 110, can be 120. They need not be 1,000 directly. But your base has remained consistent and some bit has been added on the top, right? That is what they see. They see that at an operational level, you are break even and you're making some bit of profit on it, right? They, for each element in your value chain, an investor would love to look at unit economics, whether it's per farmer, whether it's per user, whether it's per technology for you, whether it's per shipment for you, right? And then sort of like a roadmap for the next 1.5 years on. This is what we've studied. We've studied how our technology can be impacted in these three districts in Maharashtra. For the next 18 months, we want to look at for expanding these markets, testing these hypotheses in Bihar, in Orissa, in Andhra Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh, in different geographies, or taking the same technology to Kenya, to Bangladesh, to certain other countries in the global south, right? Reliability, repeatability, dependability. These three abilities, if I were an investor, I'm unfortunately not, or thankfully not, this is what I would look at. Right. So I think from an investment standpoint, that is what I can share, what an investor would like. Emmanuel sir was there in the last session I saw online. So I'm sure there isn't a more knowledgeable person to tell you what an investor looks like or looks at than he would have in the last session, right? Now, I'll tell you, as a practitioner, as someone who does this for a living, certain things that we look at and that, sort of disappoint us, certain pitfalls that we experience in our day-to-day activities, right? You come to us and you say, oh, we have taken this technology and we have done 50 demos across the country, or let's say our product has been tested, or our product has been bought by 1,000 farmers. This was under a philanthropic funded program, or this was under a grant funded program, right? If I, as a farmer, am getting money to spend on your technology, that is not proof of me as a customer wanting to buy your technology, right? That is why whatever we do, for example, the soil testing deployment that we've done, it's purely commercial. It's at a cost that is one third the NABL laboratory cost, a wet lab cost, but a farmer is paying for it. I was myself in Nashik in the onion belt, and a farmer walked by and said that, "Hey, is this from your company?" I said, "No, I'm the promoter. I'm the platform that is democratizing it." He said, this was very helpful for me. I very casually came in and I said, okay, let's spend 500 rupees. That is when I found out how high the basicity of my soil is. The pH of my soil was 10. And that is why certain crops were not going at all. That is when the recommendations came. They suggested that, okay, instead of growing this, you should grow this. Right. And then I took it to my nearby KVK, took it to my nearby Krishi Sahayaks. And they suggested, yeah, throughout several seasons, throughout changing what you're putting in the soil, your basicity of the soil can be addressed, right? These are the sort of validations I want to look at, right? I don't want you to come to me. I don't want you to say, no, 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 why should we validate? We already, through XYZ Foundation, they have bought a product and, applied it in 10,000 acres. No, that doesn't mean the farmers or the users themselves are going to pay for it in the next cycle, right? I'm sure Ananya sitting in the audience would be smiling because that is also an approach that will grow through the rain, kind of follow, right? Now, grant funded or free pilots or philanthropic pilots, they don't give you a clear picture of what they're very essential. Don't get me wrong, they're important to get the farmer, get the end user to, develop that capacity, to develop that habit, right? To get used to that product, but they don't give you a commercial sort of bent of mind, right? Um, Now, if you don't have any baseline, if you haven't done any before versus after study, right? Or if you are not doing a pilot, if you're not doing a validation with a control versus a treated comparison, then sort of just doing a one-off, okay, we put this product and the yield was XYZ% more. Compared to what? What was it before? Have you mapped that? Have you drawn a baseline? Is there a comparative batch that we can study? If in 1 acre your product was deployed, what was happening in the other 1 acre in the same farm, right? Or let's say 500, half we have divided. One standard practice is being followed, one your practice is being followed, your recommendations are being followed. That is when you can study, that is when you can have a baseline versus how your product has performed, right? Something we as an organization are very mindful of is not creating an extremely wide sort of a validation plan. We will look at one food system, we will look at a few crops, we will look at one or two repeatable or one or two related geographies. I wouldn't want to test something in, let's say, Nanded, and at the same time test something in Jorhat in Assam, right? I would want to first look at one type of food system, one type of geography, make sure that product works, make sure that there is commercial acceptability for that product. Then take it to another market and, maybe certain data points, maybe certain insights can be repeatable, maybe not. I really can't say, right? That is the beauty and the challenge of the geography we as a country have at our offering, right? Now, also last point, as I have been covering, if you just look at a broad number, oh, X number of farmers were reached through our interventions. We did this and 10,000 farmers benefited and X number of growers benefited, right? That also is a very generic, very sort of, it lacks specificity that adopters, that distributors, that buyers would want, right? Who was the early adopter? Why did they adopt it? If it was an FPO, if it was an export growing sort of, farmer, right? How did you make it risk averse? How did you benefit the entirety of value chain? So these are certain elements that you have to be very mindful of, very careful of across the process, right? Now, we can take a few questions if that's okay. And this is sort of like the exercise that I would want to do, afterwards. Or do you want me to do this exercise first and then we can take questions? I leave it up to your discretion.
Maybe we can take some questions. So if you have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask directly.
Hello, is there any question, any query, any suggestion?
Hey, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, this is Nagasai Krishna, and we run an organization called Krishi Carbon. So thanks. I think it was overall insightful presentation, largely from like practical point of view, right? I have few. I think it's more from like maybe limited to my understanding or this one, right? So I think it was more of 2, 3 follow-up questions, but I'll just ask it in this one. I think farmer paying capacity today, I think apart from the inputs, right? Any sort of new technology, right? Like as in, because with changing soil, changing climate, then there has to be new ways in which agriculture has to be thought of. But apart from the current soil, like seed, fertilizer, chemicals that they heavily invest in, they generally, there is not too much of adoption or paying capacity that comes naturally there, right? Which also means then overall from a payer point of view, there is not farmer at scale, at least for these solutions are not there. So then it also means that market validation doesn't exist for that. Like how do you assess your solution where farmer is not able to pay at scale?
Right. Nagasai, I think what you
Because then
have.
there is no business model. As in then from a business point of view, then what needs to be thought of as a business model, right?
What you have presented here is more of an opinion, right? That certain farmers are not willing to adopt. That is why you have to carefully identify, match make between the farming sort of a subgroup and your innovation. Not all innovations are for all farmers. Let's agree to that, right? If let's say I have a technology that improves the quality of strawberries, right? And I have an export-oriented farmer in Nashik. So I would take it to them, convince them, run a small technical validation, then run a pre-commercial validation with them, right? I wouldn't take that technology to small and medium landholding farmer in Madhya Pradesh, right? That is trying to grow wheat for that matter. So that is why you have to match make the innovation versus the kind of farmer it's relevant for within your network or outside your network. How carefully you do that matchmaking would be, sort of like a barometer for success. That okay, yeah, if it's done
But
well, then yeah, uptake can be there.
yeah, then which also, if I'm hearing it right, then they're like a layering, like segment of farmers at multiple levels, right? As in who is the right suitable fit.
Of course,
And
yeah,
yeah, I agree to that. Then how do we find them? See, as an entrepreneur, then I start with, as in today example, we are doing biochar. And for us, it was like when we started, it was potentially like we are doing artisanal biochar, just
yeah,
clarify. So any sort of cotton or any cotton farmer is like a target customer, right? That's what we
yeah.
started with. Then now we are understanding maybe not everyone, maybe the larger land holdings, all of that. So as an entrepreneur, how do you at least start there? Because otherwise I would be like, okay, my market size is too huge. If I put in numbers, then it will be like, okay, there is so many million farmers. But in practicality, we are not able to handle maybe 1,000, 2,000 of them. So yeah, there is a mismatch there, right?
That's exactly why you partner with organizations like EIP, like a few others, right? That work with partners that have that grassroots acceptance, that have that grassroots, reliability. That okay, if you're working with this certain organization, then they have done something good for us in the past, and if they are bringing in an innovation, there must be something to it. And because what we do, we technically validate. Oh, by the way, one thing I forgot to share is any sort of validation exercise or pre-commercial exercise that we do, that is at our dime. You as a startup are only providing us with your product. Entirety of testing, entirety of data collection, report making, entirety of farmer understanding, all of that is done at our cost, right? How we recover that cost is once you then start selling within our network, we have sort of a success fee, we have sort of a commission levied on it. Only in our network, the sales you do in our network, what you do outside, it's your business, we don't care, right? A certain success fee is levied on top of it. That is how slowly, in a trickle down manner, we recover our investment back. And then this investment is again, funded, used to fund another validation. So that's sort of our, it's a for profit, but still a social business model. So Nagasai, as I said, you have to identify a right subset of partners, a right subset of implementers, right? For artisanal biochar, there are now agencies that are collecting, cotton material. Even your maize, I think, is being used, if I'm not wrong, right? In certain geographies. So work with grassroots organizations that have that presence, that have that reliability built within the ecosystem to help you with this and facilitate this. I think that should have answered somewhat.
Yeah. And just follow on that, I think the other part which you are telling in the value chain, you add value to it, right? At least in the current model, to be honest, I think we don't see a lot of farmer value add for the, except the biochar being as a soil enhancer, all of that. Then farmer add is zero there, like literally in the, like in terms of income or in terms of anything immediate, right? And maybe the aggregator makes money in this. And as a business, maybe we are sitting in a way where we make money when we realize the credit revenue, all of that. So still, then how do we accelerate the adoption in the farmers? Because at the end of the day, farmer is the one who has to actually provide the biomass, do all of that, right?
Right. I think that's a very sort of, a question unique to your business model. We do artisanal biochar as well, so I can say from that experience. Not I don't know enough about your model, your company to give a sort of a useful advice, but there are certain aggregators that remunerate the farmer as well, albeit at a very basic rate for the feedstock, for the waste material that they're procuring. They remunerate them, and then they help in. And you can't just give away the biochar, right? It has to be activated. It has to. There's a proper process to then use. So that also is being, some bit of it is shared with these same farmers, and because it's shared, some sort of credit realization, some sort of profit sharing model is built, so that consistently year after year, season after season, they continue supplying. Uh, Trust me on that. I mean, getting leftover plants from after cotton is harvested, that is becoming a challenge. And if you look at March to, I think the cycle is March to May, right? Between
Yeah.
that, getting raw material becomes a challenge. So it has to be remunerative for the farmer, even if it's by a very small margin, for them to be interested in it, for them to keep supplying you with the raw material.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the things. Yeah.
Anything else? Anything other? Any curiosities?
We had one question from Hitesh also. Hitesh, do you want to come in and talk about it?
Okay, I can read his question. Jabalpur and Indori, which
Wanted
blocks and
to
villages?
know about the mushroom startup that you mentioned.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, we are also working in this Mandla Dindori Jabalpur pocket. So I just want to
Okay.
understand like where you have done the pilot with which organization. So yeah, if I get some time, I will visit that area, yeah, and explore how they have done it.
Hitesh, I think if possible, the WRI India team can connect you one to one, or I'll leave my email ID towards the end. If you can write to me. I'm not the exact villages, the exact locations, I wouldn't know top of my mind, but I'm sure I can get in touch with my team and identify those. And depends upon what's what's the synergy that you're looking at in that ecosystem, then we can consider a visit, or or something collaborative.
Sure, sure. And I have one question. Like you mentioned, like the whatever the pilot you're doing, it should be not a grant dependent or like funded by the other partners. So like recently we have done one pilot, like we are working in the millet value chain, and with the millets, like there was a demand for khapli beats. So what we thought, like it's a incoming demand which was coming from different like buyers whom we are supplying. So we thought, why not, like, okay, let's do a trial, do a production, and supply this material to our existing clients. So what we did, like we procured the seeds, and initially we thought, okay, we'll sell to the farmers, we'll ask at least you pay for the seeds and rest of the cost we will take care. But we have not seen like there nobody's ready like initially to pay the seed cost also. So at the end, okay, what we did a barter system where, okay, you take the seed from us, when the harvesting is done, you just return us the seed part. So what I feel ki initially, okay, the organization is young and we are not making a lot of money, then you need support for such kind of pilots. So as you mentioned, like with your profit or it should be commercially viable. But initially, how it is possible to make it viable when you are in a very initial stage?
Right. See, that's one unique challenge that startups face. Um, that's why I said for pilots that are philanthropically funded, acceptability of technology, right? Making the technology relevant, and if especially if it's something totally novel that hasn't been seen by the ecosystem, that plays its own role. Um, in my context, what I would elaborate is if you're studying market validation, if you're studying market piloting, in that case, your deployment shouldn't be funded by a grant. Uh, can you understand the difference? If you want to study how big of a market, how robust of a market is there for your product, then you cannot have your technology funded, the deployment funded by an external grant provider. Then it has to be in a commercial manner. If it's something totally new and if the acceptability is not there, then yes, of course, you can work with several philanthropic organizations, and a lot of our organizations do work, right, to just make the ecosystem aware of what you're trying to, right? But I think you answered your own questions. You did innovate and find a barter system, you know, and that exactly is sort of a solution that you learned out of it, right? It's not like you gave them out for free. You did get something back in return. So I think that is how, as you go along, you learn different models, you learn different deployment pathways to take any innovation to the ground. Well, I think let's take two more questions. Then this small 10-minute exercise I would want you all to do, and then we can call it a day. How about that?
Sudhaji, you can come in.
Yeah. Thank you, Payal. Thank you, Mr. Vikas. A very good. I think I'm in the correct position where we're doing market validation. So we had been doing pilots across the country in some 5 locations. So as you had been mentioning, so we are basically a soil health tech company. So we do have products that can be carried to the farm, and soil test can be done within 15 minutes. The issue was the product cost was very high, so we had to launch it as a soil test as a service. So we had taken that risk of manufacturing the machine, and as it will be contradictory to your previous statement, so it's all completely funded by CSI. We do have grants, so that grants are helping me making the product. But for me to reach out to a customer, I came up with a different business model where we work with the VLEs. That VLEs, we onboard them as a soil partner and we share a revenue. So suppose so we have done an innovation in terms of reducing the cost of test, ease of test. So the cost of test, even if it's 200 rupees, which is the lowest in the market currently, we do provide a quality 14 parameter test. So
Now, this 200, the farmer is paying for this, right?
yeah, in some regions, Odisha didn't work out. We put it for 100 only. We took a loss there. I mean, we were break even kind or some loss there, but now it's working out with 200 rupees. So the problem now it's becoming like, as I launch soil test as a service, many village level entrepreneurs are interested to join because it's like a earning revenue. Some
Yeah.
10,000 is made, 5,000 they earn, 5,000 we earn. In that 5,000, we are covering all the logistics, training, providing chemicals and all that. So whole purpose was to drive the soil testing, make soil testing as a habit creation. So we were not getting much here. Now the problem is, instead of people working towards bringing the soil health and restoration, they're always worried on making more and more test and on money. So how do I make a shift of that really? Or I mean, we are training them, we are telling them, but still, see, if you have incentivized something, they're more towards earning that. But the whole purpose of improving the soil health and doing repeatability with that same and developing the case studies, it's not happening. Can you throw a light little on how do I make that shift with the person who is associating with that? If you're, I mean, aware of these
Right.
kind.
See, what you did is something perfectly acceptable. You used the grant funding to generate your inventory and use that inventory to get, develop testing as a habit amongst farmers, in initial stages. What I think is most crucial, I'm not sure if you've done that or if not, you should do that, is have these really have some skin in the game, right? Do not give out the device or the technology to them for free. I'm not asking you to take entirety of your manufacturing cost from them, but have them pay for some of it. If they have paid for some of it, because these are village level entrepreneurs being the key word, right? They are business people themselves, they are retail store owners, or they have some sort of business activities going on. Have them pay a bit of that device, have them pay something for it, because then their desire to recover that and make money on that would be all the more high, right? Also, something I'll tell you, if you want to introduce soil testing, you've introduced, never start with the lowest of prices. If you say the total price today is 200, forget ever taking it up to 350 or 400. If the farmers have gotten used to 200, they will pay 200 or they won't just get it done. The key here is introduce it at its full price. Tell them it's for 500 rupees, but offer an initial discount. Right? Say that for the first 10,000 tests, for first 1,000 tests. Make the farmers feel special in that manner. Because that's how I think, the human psychology also works. The price test is 600 rupees. But for the first adopters or for first 1,000 or 5,000 farmers or whatever, for first test, there's a special price of 200 rupees. So that you have already introduced that higher mark, in the market. You can then go from 200 to 350 or 400 or anywhere up to that mark, right? And there would be some bit of acceptability. If you started from 200 and then you bring about a increase of 300, 350 rupees, that's another 100, 200% increase, in their minds. So these are, I think, a few practical insights that I can immediately suggest to you.
Yeah. This I'll just take care of it. And there is an onboarding charge I forgot to mention. It is 12.5K. Like tenth,
Okay,
1/10 of the device like that we calculate and we make them tell like you're getting
right,
something at 1/10 of the price of the machine. You
right.
want this and this, and there is some minimal test they have to do per month. That also we keep. But it's moving. I mean, as you told, now for us to again increase the price, it becomes a challenge because we would have introduced it to lower price.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Yeah, maybe I'll do that.
For any new market, introduce it at full price, and then you take the price, offer an initial discount on it or offer a cut down on it. That I think I'm sure that will work.
Yeah. And one more little request from mine. Any pilots that even your organization is doing in Maharashtra and MP regions, we would like to have a one-on-one discussion to take it up.
Any one-on-one, any onboarding pilot related, anything related to EIP's program, I'll leave out my email towards the end. You all can, of course, keep the WRI India team in the loop and reach out to me, and then we can take it one to one. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Divya, you can come in. Divya?
Mr. Mahesh and Abhishek. Thanks.
Okay, I thought you wanted to come in. Abhishek, Mahesh, you can ask your question.
Abhishek, you can go. I will up later on. I will.
So, hi Vikas sir, like really nice session. Wanted to ask this question, like because you do field pilots, right? How do you and when you are piloting, there's always risk that the technology that you're testing it might work out, it might won't work out. then how do you de-risk your like farmers, or like what incentive do you give to them? Say, okay, try and test this. So how does this happen? Because this is something very difficult thing. You know it is a pilot. Like how do you bridge that gap, or what learning that we can take from it as a cohort uh, preventing our project?
See, typically what we work in is the risk factor is very low because the field size that we subject to something totally new is very negligible compared to the entire scale. That is why working with partners like the Syngenta Foundation India and Agri Entrepreneur Growth Foundation, organizations that have spent decades for development of the community for farmers, right? That is where working and being partnered with such organization comes in handy, comes in very valuable, because the amount of trust the farmers have on them is immense, right? They know that okay, if a technology is being brought through them, will either work or it simply wouldn't work, it wouldn't damage anything, right? Also in our process as well, we very carefully we look at all your safety protocols, all your reports and all your certificates and approvals, that yes, your product is either going to aid something, it's going to improve something, or it's not going to impact anything at all. Very highly unlikely. I think we've tested 22, 23 technologies. Only once it has happened that the farmer has incurred a loss. And in that case, we've dealt with it as an organization. We've taken responsibility and then made provisions to deal with it. That I think. So what I'm trying to say is you work with partners that have that trust capital built, within their communities, within their ecosystems, right? That is why,
But
and there are, yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
just a follow-up question. So what do you inform the farmer that this will work, this will not work, or are we testing? Like,
Of course, Abhishek, you should be a live example
you
of
know,
what farmers benefit. I think your innovation particularly worked well and increase certain yields
what
and
do
improve quality.
that I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my question is, what do we inform the farmer? Like, we are validating it, or like this will help you. How do you? So you say you go ahead with the trust factor of a partner organization, right? But what is the thing that is informed to the farmer? Okay, this will gonna work, or this
Okay.
might
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
might not work.
No. Farmers have their buy-in. Farmers know exactly what is going on. Farmers, contrary to popular opinion, are some of the smartest people you will meet. Right? They are some of the most well-read people you'll meet. The amount of information that they get on their WhatsApp groups is unparalleled. Right? They know, okay, this is a new technology. It's a new tech is coming in. Testing is happening. It's going to benefit. If it benefits, it's going to benefit in this manner, or otherwise it will just be what the baseline is, the baseline will be. That is what the farmers are informed, that is what the farmers, that is why our process takes time. It's not a very easy, it's not a very short term sort of a process. Farmers confidence is utmost in what we are doing, right? They know, okay, this is what is being done, this is how it can benefit us, or it might not work out at all. And what happens most of the time is when they see something is benefiting, they end up becoming the early adopters for that particular technology, right? Where we have done these validations, where we have done these piloting, also becomes our sandbox for then commercially introducing that technology.
Mahesh ji, do you want to come in here?
Yes, yes. Sir, thank you very much for your valuable presentation, sir. I'm Mahesh and I'm a founder of Millets now. हम लोग सर मिलेट्स वैल्यू चेन पे काम कर रहे हैं महाराष्ट्र मध्य प्रदेश में, जहाँ पे आई थिंक आपने जो कवर किया था बस कि जैसे
आपका
राइट फ्रॉम योर
आवाज बहुत
स्मॉल
टूट रहा है
लैंड
महेश जी.
होल्डिंग अप टू
Mahesh ji, you can turn off your video and
अभी
then we ask.
या राइट नाउ यस
It's better.
यस यस
Yeah.
अभी आ रहा है सर?
हाँ, it's better now.
यस सर. तो सर हम लोगों ने क्या किया था, मतलब जैसे हम लोग मिलेट्स में काम कर रहे हैं तो करंटली वी आर वर्किंग विद अराउंड द 7,500 स्मॉल होल्डर फार्मर्स. और जो हम लोग जैसे कि वी आर क्रिएटिंग द इम्पैक्ट इन द like social, environmental and economical. While we are measuring the impacts, तो उसमें बहुत सारी difficulties थी, right from the कि फार्मर से कितना हम लोग पेमेंट कर रहे हैं या सीड्स बैकवर्ड लिंकेज में हम लोगों ने डिफिकल्टी फेस किया था. तो राइट नाउ वी हैव अ डेवलप वन एप्लीकेशन का डेटा उसके बाद ग्रेडिंग बिकॉज कि हम लोग किसी जैसे कि while we are procuring आइडेंटिफाइंग कि हम लोग उनको रिम्यूरेटिव प्राइस नहीं दे पा रहे थे, तो हम लोगों ने एक एप्लीकेशन डेवलप किया है. तो कैन यू वैलिडेट दैट एप्लीकेशन फ्रॉम योर EIP? लाइक आप लोग वो कर सकते हैं या नॉट वैलिडेशन, बट वी आर फेसिंग द सम चैलेंजेस फॉर दैट कि कैसे उसको एग्जीक्यूट होना चाहिए या उसमें थोड़ा हमें थोड़ा इसमें हाउ वी कैन जनरेट द रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम दैट वन. लाइक FPO साइड पे हम लोग चाह रहे हैं कि to reach out to every older farmer ready for us. So थोड़ा can you guide us that one? Yeah, I think you clear किया है, तो उसमें can you guide us for that कि कैसे कर सकते हो उसमें?
Sure, Mahesh ji. मैं अपना email address अभी towards the end I'll display it on the screen. You can take a screenshot or you can note it down and just send me a bit more details. It's very I can't make say anything based on very limited information. I would have to have a much more I think some Akansha from my team would need to have a much more in-depth conversation with you to understand how you exactly fit into the value chain for us, and based on that we can take the next steps. I think right now saying anything would be a bit too premature.
Okay, sir. Sure. So
Okay, no other questions. Then I would like to present this very small exercise for you all, if that is okay. Cool. Just let me quickly share my screen again. Right. I mean, so ideally it is to be done in groups, but you all can do and maybe 2 or 3 we can discuss, right? If you look at the matrix in front of you, the biggest hurdles that can be caused to your business model is from this quadrant right here. Is from this quadrant right here, which are high risk assumptions, and these are untested assumptions, right? If your assumptions, any assumptions that you're making in building your business model, they're tested, then there is no issue with them at all, right? If they might be high risk, but they're tested, so that's perfectly fine. Similarly, if they are low risk and they have been tested, that's also good to have. If they're low risk and they're untested, at times, you can leave them and these are certain things you can test later. But high risk and untested assumptions can make or break your business. So what I would really want you to do is think of a product or think of one service that you're offering, right? And if Payal, is it possible to put 3-4 people in each group, or if it's too complicated, let them do on their own. Identify one factor each in your business models, in your technology development life cycle, right? That an assumption that you had was high risk, but you have tested it. An assumption that is high risk, but you have not tested it. An assumption that is low risk, but tested. Low risk, but untested. If you can just fill in 4 examples for me here, right? And like take, I don't know, it's 16:36. Take until 16:45, let's say 9 to 10 minutes, and just create some sort of, like a matrix of these 4. How does that sound? That sounds doable to everyone, or is it too much of brain prodding and you'd rather do it on your own?
I think we can do it.
Cool. So let's just take a sort of a very small gap. You've noted what has to be filled, right? The matrix. So let's see, any 3 or 4 of you, if you can do it, then based on that, we can have some sort of a discussion, see where each of us stands and, And basically what I've been talking about for the past hour, see it really in practice.
Because I think this is a good idea because the cohort also had a similar exercise for one of the earlier sessions, right? Where we were looking at, but those are very early discussions. I think this will help think a bit more through what you already tested, right? So I think it's a good connector there, and I'm sure this will be a useful exercise for the cohort.
Perfect, perfect. I can leave the screen as is, and you all can just see what is it that I'm talking about. I'm here, just I'll answer a quick call. And just at 16:37 right now, 16:45, I'll come back online and we'll discuss, what anyone has Right. So I think we are 1 minute over the time limit we had decided. So has anyone gotten the idea? Has anyone created sort of this risk matrix, risk versus assumption matrix?
Yeah, Nagasai, you can unmute and sure.
Sorry, Pal, you saying something?
Yeah, Nagasai had his hand raised, so yeah, you can
Okay.
come.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Nagasai.
think
Yeah.
our business model equivalent, maybe the work we are doing, whatever tested which are on high risk zone are largely around for the biomass around cotton, chili, corn, biochar to
Is
carbon
there
equivalent.
is there some way you can project the matrix on the screen, or you've done it in a
So like
physical
this, I have
notebook?
written it in physical
Okay.
copy.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So let's say in your first quadrant, high risk and tested, what all have you put?
Biochar, two number of carbon credits. I think our whole business model is revolving around it. So each feedstock of cotton, chili, corn, three feedstocks. How much is the carbon equivalent, as in terms of credits, and unit economics for the production, including carbon, all of that. What is the unit economics that sounds like for all of these three feedstocks?
And you've tested it
Which is,
already.
yeah, which is tested and credits
That
issued.
means
All of
you've
that.
mitigated the biggest risk factor that you could
Yeah,
have
yeah,
had, right? Your core
yeah.
business model untested before going into market. Excellent. Second quadrant, high risk and untested. What do you have?
Actual price realization of carbon credits.
Right, right. And
How much will you
let's
receive
say,
in the bank? So
yeah, let's say low risk and tested. Let's cover the other two
low
as
risk,
well.
yeah, low risk tested. I think climapreneur, like in our own channel, we work with climapreneurs, as in the rural entrepreneurs, basically.
Yeah,
How much money they make, that was proven, as in how much they can make in 100 days or one particular season, right? So that I feel is at least without those channels, they still can run, as in produce all of that. But for us, it
yeah,
was
yeah,
more on build those channels. So
yeah.
that is tested now. And not tested, I think, which is like low risk and also untested today is more on if we have to alternate stream of revenue beyond carbon, like biochar, what will
And
be the sale price, all of that. We don't,
to
we
be
don't
very
know.
honest, for a company built around artisanal biochar and carbon credits, that is something that can be tested much later as well in your
Yeah.
development life cycle. So what if I were to design your validation, right? What is it that I would study? What it would be based around? Is your what is there in your second quadrant, which is actual real world cost of your carbon credits, right? Because that could literally make or break
Yeah.
your business model. So I would identify areas, I would identify the feedstock for your carbon, I would identify how much you're spending on a kiln, I would identify how much gunny bags you're buying, for 25 kg. I know I know the process inside out, sorry. So, and I would then create sort of like a cost benefit statement, then get clarity on how much your credit is weighing, is costing. And is it outweighing all your input expenses? Right. So this is something I would immediately go to field and test, either by myself or in partnership with an organization, right? Because if you've done everything and then in the end you're realizing, okay, we've spent $100,000 and the amount of value we've generated is only $15,000, then that's something isn't definitely matching. So there
Yeah.
you go. That is what validation is. That is how you identify what has to be studied. That is how you end up designing a rather impactful validation plan, right? Anyone else has taken a shot at it?
I think Hitesh has his hand raised. So Hitesh, you can come in if you want.
Yeah. So actually, recently we have done one pilot. So it's not about the whole business. It is about the one value chain, about the one product
Perfect.
which we
Yeah.
have done the like we did the tasting like pilot, you can say. So we did a production of one 50 acres ka khapli. It's immer wheat. Like production, we did the pilot. So I can say like the high risk and tested, you can say, can the farmers adopt the new variety? And the second thing, can production be done in the MP, Madhya Pradesh region? Because this variety is from the Maharashtra and it was a new
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
So here we were very skeptical. The production will be happen here or not. So this thing, I feel like the high risk and the tested part we have done. You can say high risk and not tasted. Can we make the value-added products out of it? Because we have not tried it. It
Yeah.
just there's a buzz in the market and lot of incoming demand was coming, so we did the production. But yeah, increasing our margins. Uh, can we make out of a like value-added products? Yeah, still we have not tried it out. I
And what
can
about the
say
bottom
the
two?
low
Yeah. Sorry.
what? Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry,
bottom
you
two.
were
Yeah.
already saying. Yeah.
So that yeah. So tested and the low risk, I can say, do the mark do the market will accept it because we have not did the testing part because already the incoming demand was coming. But the worry is like what will happen in the scale when you're working with 1,000 farmers and your production go beyond like 600 ton, 800 ton. So then what will be the situation? Is that market adaptability or the requirement demand is there or not? So this thing, and I feel like some of the tasting we have done in that, but not completely done, I can say. The low risk and untested, I can see. What is the impact on the water and the soil, on the resources? So we have not tested that part in this. We just like, हाँ ठीक है, production करना है, seed दे दो, कर लिया. But हाँ, in terms of soil health पे क्या impact है, water पे क्या impact है, we not tested. बस we felt कि अच्छा ठीक है, हमारे लिए भी इसमें कोई risk नहीं है और टेस्ट नहीं करेंगे तो it is not impact us.
Hitesh, I think you're in a restoration cohort. That is the first thing I would go and test, right? How
Yeah, yeah.
your innovation, how what you're
Hmm.
doing is impacting
Correct, correct.
soil and water. I think that
Yeah.
should be a priority. I would move it to, yeah, it doesn't fall in the risk paradigm, but it should be a high priority sort of thing.
Correct, correct. Yeah.
But if I'm to design your validation, I would look at the geographies in which you're growing. Are there any processing units around that geography? Are there any agencies that deliver, courier, pack, ship, right? Cold chain infrastructure
Yeah.
is existing.
Yeah.
Lastly, in the immediate vicinity, in the immediate cities where you're growing, is there demand for your khapli wheat products? Right? I would do sort of a market assessment, and then I would see if your entire growing cycle is okay per season 5 lakh rupees, and your share processing cost is 11 to 12 lakh rupees, and you sell products worth 15 lakhs, so you're in a net loss of 2 lakh rupees, right? So I would do some bit of mathematics around it and see if it makes sense for you to sell it as a raw material to other white labelers, or should you go into production as well, and I would test it now. I would test it immediately, and that is something you can do within yourself as well, right? So if you're a company that's trying to create ready-to-eat products or premium consuming products, consumables, I would test it sooner rather than later. So see, you learn everything new every day. Something that you haven't realized could be a high risk factor for you if left untested. Now you are aware of it, and I'm sure now it'll make way in your mind, and you'll find ways to get it validated. So that's exactly the purpose. I think, yeah, that means to a certain extent I have, by constant blabbering for the past hour and a half, been able to inculcate some of the um, risk sort of lens in your business models, and how do you assign category to it. Is there anyone else at all, or we can then call it a day and keep thinking about it later on? Nope, I think okay. I think it was two.
I sorry, wanted to just quickly come in before we let you go. There was this wonderful question on what are the investor signals, and I think you've also covered that question in your slides, right? I just wanted to have a quick sort of follow-up question on that. Do you think there are any signals or any proof points that disproportionately increase investor confidence? Is there anything you would want to highlight on that?
Disproportionate adoption of the technology on the ground would directly mean that as rapid and as widespread the adoption is on ground, is how much an investor would trust other technology, right? And if it's applicable to just there were nothing, is disproportionate in agriculture. Let me say that at first. Whatever um, impacts the farmer then gets magnitude keeps getting increases as we go every rung in the value chain. And then from an investor standpoint, if they're putting in, okay, now that we're talking, what type of investor are we looking at? Is this sort of like a blended finance model? Are we looking at someone that specializes in patient capital, right? Are these, risk averse investors? Are these purely venture capitalists who want to put in X and get 10X out, right? So a lot would depend on the kind of appetite they have, the kind of history they have, right? How they have been sending out term sheets, etc. But yes, if acceptability on ground is more, investors' confidence would be more. From a sort of a practitioner's perspective, that is what I can say.
Thanks, Vikas. I think personally for me, this was quite a learning session. I learned a lot of things, and I hope the cohort also found it to be useful. Great session. Thank you so much, Vikas. And we'll also be in touch with you, for subsequent sort of phases of the program as well, to check if you're interested and available to also help us there. But yeah,
Sure,
thank you
sure.
so much. That's from me.
Of course, let me know. Let me know as and when you all plan something in future. Would love to help out.
Yeah.
Great. I think all the best, everyone. And some of you will work more closely and hope to work more closely with the rest of you. I think the team has my email address that they can float around. If any of you have any queries, any interesting, conversations you want to have, please do reach out.
Can everyone please turn on their videos? Let's just take a screenshot for the social media post. Okay, so it's done. Okay.
Perfect. Good luck, everyone. Have a good weekend and see you around somewhere or the other. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'll share the feedback form also with everyone. I'll just share it and you can just fill it and
So we're low on time, and we know that we didn't get time for office hours last session as well. Maybe for the next session, we could have it pre-session. But if there's anything that any of you want to, discuss, reflect on, feel free to write to us directly or bring it up right now. Apart from this, we also wanted to check in with you and update some of the opportunities that we'd shared with you. If you've, pursued them, how they've panned out. Again, we'd be very excited to hear those. We were hoping to cover them as part of the last as well as this office hours, but we're very happy to see that the interactive session is going really well and all of you seem to be engaging really well. So yeah, all lines are always open. Feel free to write into us either on the WhatsApp group or on email.
Yeah.
And I think you can